Look, if you enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, then more than likely you're going to enjoy this movie. If you don't enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, then you're probably still going to enjoy this movie. One of the great things about Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is that it is very self-aware about what it's representing. It's representing a role-playing game in which it's often played by friends who usually, at least in the experiences that I've had, don't always take things super seriously. There's a mix of the serious aspects of the adventure and then the just goofing on aspects of the friends playing around with each other. And this movie does a good job of having a nice mix of that. And it's probably my favorite thing about this film is that it actually feels like a Dungeons and Dragons session from the characters that they have in the movie who feel like your typical gang that you'd get together with your barbarian, with your bard, with your paladin, and how they all kind of work together. They each have their place on the team. You have some of the characters that are very lighthearted, like to crack a lot of jokes. You have some characters who are played to be very serious, maybe you don't understand that type of stuff. And so it has a nice feel in that experience. And all of the characters in this movie were actually really enjoyable to the point that I would love to see more of them in the future. And I would like to see this gang get back together. Now, some of the side characters outside of the main group aren't nearly as interesting as what you get with these primary and protagonists, but all of them still work for the film and help it to have that very family-friendly, lighthearted feel that a lot of times you would get in a D&D session. And that's not to say that it never really takes itself seriously. It does have a nice plot to it, a nice story. It's not a super unique story, but it's enough that it delivers what it needs for its film, and it gives us that fun adventure that it was promising and is really pleasing all the way through. So I highly recommend and enjoy this film. As well as the characters feeling like actual D&D characters and feeling like they belong to a campaign that you might play with your friends. This story itself also feels like that. There's enough connections to the D&D world, and the characters that they mention, the places, and kind of the events and things that are going on are so familiar that if you're familiar with the game, you'll like to hear all those Easter eggs. You'll like to see all the different monsters and characters and places that get referenced or make an appearance in this film, and that's a whole lot of fun. But at the same time, they do it in a way that even if you don't play Dungeons and Dragons, it doesn't really matter. It's just a fun fantasy film. Everything that you really need to know gets explained. And if you don't really need to know it, maybe the drop doesn't mean quite as much to you, but it can still look like a cool creature. It can still look like fun fantasy. And I really enjoyed that aspect of this film. I also like how the characters work with each other and the fact that there are decisions that are made in this movie to the point that some of them are so smart. And you watch them do something like that was a really, really good idea and how they figured that out. And then other times they do things you're like, that was kind of dumb. Like, I don't know why you did that. Or there's times where they do things you're like, that was the most absurd thing that you could have chosen to do at that moment, but it's absolutely what I would have picked if I was playing this game as well. And so there's that nice element of that where it feels like a campaign. It feels like a group of friends playing where sometimes they're really smart. Sometimes they do the most insane stuff that probably drives the dungeon master mad, and it's a blast. I really, really enjoyed that. As for like entertainment value of this film, it's very comedically based. It's very lighthearted. It has a MCU style feel to it in many occasions, and I like that. I think that this doesn't need to be a serious fantasy movie based off of what it is portraying, and it did a good job of giving us what it was. Another thing that was a surprise standout in this film for me has to be the action. I didn't really know going in what the action was going to be like. There were a few parts of the trailers that I thought looked fun. There were a few parts of the trailers that I thought looked like they might be a little cheesy and dumb. But throughout, the action's actually really entertaining, and they did a good job with it in the way that the different characters fight, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed this movie. And so for a film that kind of was up and down for me as we kind of followed the road to get to it. When I originally saw the trailers, I was like, maybe it's fun. I was excited for a D&D movie. I love D&D the game. But the trailers looked kind of goofy. They looked kind of cheesy, and I didn't really know how I felt about that. and so my expectations weren't super high. And then the reviews came out, and they were pretty positive overall. And I was like, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this movie a little bit more now. And I watched it, and it's a really good movie. Like, it's probably not going to be my top movie of the year. It might make it into the top 10. I don't know. It's a fun film that I see myself rewatching several times. It's fun enough to the point that I would love to see a sequel happen with these characters. And if they end up having a sequel in a couple years, I'll be in the theaters to watch it. As for cleanliness on this film, very family friendly. There's really nothing that you have to look out for. It obviously does have action, a little bit of violence, but not all that gory. There are some characters and elements to the film that I guess can be a little bit frightening for younger viewers, but a lot of them are done in a way that they're almost comedic. For instance, there's a graveyard scene in this film, and yeah, it's dead people and they're waking up and they're talking and all that, but it's comedic almost the entire time. And so it's more of a funny scene than it is a frightening scene. But for some younger viewers, it might be a little bit scary. But anyways, guys, those are my thoughts on Dungeons and Dragons Honor of Thieves. I really enjoyed the movie. I thought that it was a lot better than I had anticipated. I thought that it was a lot better than really anyone expected it to be. And for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give this one an A minus. But anyways, guys, have you had the opportunity to see Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves? If you have, let us know in the comments what you thought. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.